Where you go, Rick?
All right. So thanks for having me, Todd. I appreciate that. And welcome to everybody who's joined us this evening, and for those who will watch this later as a recorded video. This evening I want to talk about VFPX. And typically when I do VFPX sessions, I usually show what's new in VFPX. But based on some feedback that I've been getting specifically at the 2013 conferences and in talking with other presenters and other people in the community, I thought I would change things up a little bit and talk more about a roundup, exactly what VFPX is, and then go into some of my more favorite things to demonstrate with VFPX. So if anyone has questions, go ahead and just feel free to jump in on the chat board and let me know. I like interactive sessions, so if you also have anything to contribute, feel free to do that as well. Okay, so my name is Rick Schummer. I'm going to be showing you VFPX, which is an open source project hosted on CodePlex. We're going to go in depth and take a look at CodePlex and the various aspects of CodePlex and see how the different tools and components in VFPX can help you as a developer build better applications or more modern applications and possibly enhance the development environment that you will build the applications in. For those who don't know who I am, my name is Rick Schummer, president of White Light Computing. We're a 4-person or 5-person consulting firm here in southeastern Michigan in the United States. We do lots of development in Visual Foxpro, as well as other platforms and tools and languages for our customer base, which is growing by the day. I'm a Foxpro Lifetime Achievement Award winner back in 2010. I'm a retired Microsoft MVP. I organized the Southwest Fox Conference. I can only suggest that you try to attend this year's conference, which will be October 16th through the 19th, which just was recently announced. I'm one of the VFPX administrators. I've co-written 7 books with Henson Work and the German Foxpro user group. I write a column in Fox Rocks, which is the Fox journal that's produced every other month. I've authored actually over 90 articles, I think now. And the last bullet point here, my email address is probably the most important one of everything. If you have any questions that I didn't answer this evening, feel free to email me and I'll see what I can do. So the idea here tonight is to cover what's in VFPX, what kind of people are involved with VFPX, the CodePlex website where VFPX is hosted, and then jump into a handful of tools and stuff, quick demonstration of them at least, and we'll see how much time we have and what we can fit in. I usually put in a little disclaimer that I don't have full knowledge of everything in VFPX. The simple, it's me against the world.
Whoever just jumped into the meeting, if you could mute your mic for us. Getting a lot of noise there.
Okay.
Thank you.
Todd, there's a way for me to mute it, isn't it?
You can mute everybody if you like. And since you and I are the only ones talking, maybe you want to do that.
How do I do that?
You go into the phone button, And there's a top right
Muted.
corner, mute them. So if you've got
The conference is now in presentation mode.
if you've
All
got
right,
any
so
questions, put them in the chat window, and I'll interrupt Rick with whatever you want to ask.
Perfect. Anyways, I was just talking about the disclaimer. I don't know everything there is to know about VFPX. I know quite a bit about VFPX, but there are a number of developers who are working around the clock to make my knowledge obsolete. And if that's the case, I apologize for that, but I try to keep up on it as much as possible. And I will tell you that there's no way in heck in the time we have allotted that you'll see every tool or every component that's in VFPX in this one session. It's literally impossible. So why was this session developed in the first place? Why am I taking the roundup approach? Well, it has to go back to a survey that was done on this with the OFUG group. And there were two particular questions that caught my interest. One was, what do you know about Thor, basically, or how do you use it, or what do you use? And only 32%, now I know this is not a large sampling of numbers, but only 32% of people say they use it a lot. And that means only 1 out of 3 Foxpro developers are doing anything with Thor. And Thor is one of the biggest tools and productivity enhancement features in VFPX. And then the other question was about VFPX. Do you really know about VFPX? And only 40% of the respondents were saying they use it a lot. Yes, there are a few people that use it a little, and then there's only a few people who know nothing about it. But in broader discussions in the community outside of conferences, where people who go to the conferences are typically going to know about it specifically from sessions at the conference. But in the broader picture, in talking with developers who are not in line with going to forums like Foxsite or the Universal Thread, or subscribing to FoxRocks, these developers really don't know what VFPX is about and what can help them. And so that's sort of what has driven me to try to market VFPX in a different sense than I have been doing by showing people what's just new in the last year. In case you haven't heard, myself and Doug Hennig, Jim Nelson, Eric Selje, and Tamar Grainer have written what I will call the most important book written for Foxpro developers since the Hacker's Guide, in the sense that this book is got in it almost everything you need to know about VFPX in depth by some of the brightest people who are involved with VFPX. And if you don't have this book, I highly encourage you to go over to the foxrocks.com website and get yourself a copy. It's an ebook. You'll have it fairly soon after you place your order. It was released just this past fall. It was finished about a year before that, but between the white paper that I can provide for this session and the book, you will have 100%, near 100% coverage, except for some of the newer projects that have been included in the last month or two. Okay, for those who don't know what VFPX is, it's an open source community effort to create add-ons for Visual Foxpro, as well as not only for the IDE, but also components that you can include within your applications. It is also, in my opinion, a significant part of the future of Foxpro. It is a very small group, if you call 40 or so developers a small group. About 40 developers are building the open source projects within VFPX. And if you look in the broader community of tens of thousands of developers, only 40 people are working on these projects in any way possible, as from developing, documenting, writing, testing, and so on. The people that are administrating the site or the projects in general, Craig Boyd, Doug Hennig, myself, and Jim Nelson. We provide guidance to the project developers as well as guide which projects are accepted into VFPX. So the first thing I want to do is show you VFPX, the website on Codeplex. I probably, out of all the questions I get about VFPX, is where do I go to find out about VFPX, and where do I go to download the different things in VFPX. So let's take a quick look at VFPX. I'll pick the wrong one. So here is the website. If you go to vfpx.org, it will take you to the Codeplex site. The Codeplex URL is vfpx.codeplex.com. That is the homepage, and you see the homepage right now. The homepage has got some critical information on it, of course, like some of the news. We also have recent releases that the different development teams are putting together. Now, you'll see the project list is quite extensive. We have an alternate SCC text. These are all production releases. We'll talk about that a little bit, but if you use source code control and you need to flatten out your binary source code files like forms and VCXs and reports, this is a tool that has been enhanced past the version that's included in Visual Foxpro. We have a control renamer builder, which is a tool that is like allows you to take objects that are named. You could change the name, and it will not only change the name of the object as you would in the property sheet, but also will go in and change the reference to that object in all the methods within the form or the class that you're working on. Desktop Alerts is a tool that will bring you up or pop up little windows in the corner, much like Outlook does on incoming email. FFC is the Microsoft Foundation class. That is, Microsoft has made the Fox Foundation classes and Xsource available to the open source, so that we can now take the things that Microsoft built within the Foxpro IDE, like, well, in the case of the FFC, there's sample code and base foundation code. In the case of Xsource, you could take things like the class browser or the task pane manager or the object browser and toolbox and tools like that, and modify those and make them available, those changes available to the broader Fox community, which you couldn't do prior to this. We're going to go into Finder later this evening because that's one of my favorite tools of late. Fox Barcode is a barcoding capability without having to invest in barcode fonts. Fox Barcode QR, which is QR barcodes, without having to use third-party libraries, all Fox code and some DLLs. I'm also going to show that this evening. Fox Charts is a graphing control. I'm going to show a little bit of an add-on feature for Fox Charts later this evening. It enhances your IDE to work with tabs across the top, much like you might see in SQL Server Management Studio or the .NET IDE. FRX tabs, I'm trying to click on that. Oops. Didn't realize I could really mess things up on something as simple as browsing a web page. Just do this. Um, Anyways, FRX tabs is a way to data drive the report tabs on the report designer. GDI plus X is a graphing tool that allows you to implement GDI plus API functions. Go is a great tool for searching for text within your source code, much like code references, but way, way, way faster and way better. IntelliSense X is a way to enhance your IDE in many different ways with through IntelliSense. The new property, new method replacement is a dialog that replaces the add a property or add a method within the IDE. Menus are exactly that, they're object-oriented menus. Parallel Fox gives you the ability to easily and quite frankly, quite simply, implement parallel processing within a Foxpro application. The PEM editor is a well, it's a complete replacement for a number of IDE tools, including Property Sheet and the editing of properties, events, and methods. Project Hook X is a Project Hook extension library that allows you to run multiple project hooks for a single project, which is outside the design of project hooks. Is the Sedna release, but now available for us to make enhancements to the various Sedna projects. SS is a handful of different UI tools. Theme controls is also a graphics rich user interface set of controls. Thor, we're going to talk about tonight before as well. It's a management tool for all your tools that you would have within the Foxpro IDE. You have localization for French, Russian. You have a new help file. If you are not using this new help file, probably the single easiest thing you could do tonight is download this help file and implement it. Basically, it is the SP2 help file that Microsoft broke. The community fixed it and has since taken on and enhanced it with Microsoft's blessing. VFPX 232 C32 is a FLL with a bunch of Windows APIs implemented, and then X source we talked about. Automated build gives you the build to do well, to automate builds in a way that you push one button and everything happens. It can build, it can email, it can copy files, and so on. The rest of these here, we put on a list. Anything you see in VFPX that is in beta release or higher is, in my opinion, extremely stable, extremely useful. I've implemented things like that's what I think we've already updated some of these beta releases, but some of the beta, I've implemented beta releases before in production code. It's just one of those things that you need to try things out. When you try them out, you test them thoroughly, and when you test them thoroughly, you realize how useful they are for you or your customers' applications. You can see some at state. Some of these are less useful for production, and in fact, if you read our VFPX book, you'll see that we not only go in depth on how you install this, but also, I mean, where you get it, where you install it, how to use it, but also some of the pitfalls, if there are some, and any bugs that you may run into that have not yet been fixed. There are a couple projects here that have been abandoned or deprecated from the VFPX. Those I would highly not recommend. If you are interested in other source projects for VFPX, for VFP, I should say, here's a list of them that are out on the web, and other, some are in Codeplex, some are available in other locations. The licensing for VFPX is very, very and liberal. You can basically use anything you see on VFPX for free. You can use it in production, commercial, not-for-profit type applications, anything, with no need to pay for any of it. Everything you see here is 100% free. Just a little, I think the other important thing is to propose a new project. We have a simple two-page, 10 questions or so application form that you fill out. Projects at vfpx.org, and you'll find the administrators will review it and accept it or reject it. The rejection criteria is quite simple. If it's illegal, immoral, or it competes with a known third-party product in the community, we don't want to destroy our third-party community. So those are pretty much the only things that will get it rejected. Or if you don't fill out the application, we can't accept it, of course. All right. The home page. This entire website is a wiki, a dynamic wiki that you can edit and change and enhance as the community should do, which is to make the site great. So I'm just got one project. Thor happens to be one of the most active ones on the website here, and also one of the more well-documented projects. You will find the VFPX projects, if there's one thing lacking, it is documentation. But if you get the VFPX book that we wrote, documentation almost becomes a moot point. But everything you see was written by fellow developers who are passionate about this project or other projects. And you can see that's documentation for this particular project. It's quite thin for other projects, but you can see that everything has hyperlinks to other pages within the wiki. So if you use the Foxpro wikis, the Black maintains, you kind of have an idea. It's a different markup script internally within the wiki itself, but in general, it is quite easy to use. There are several tabs across the top here. Each one of these take us to a different page within the VFPX portion of Codeplex. This code here is the repository. We have a Subversion repository that's part of VFPX. You will have to, depending on the project, some projects, the developers are using the source code repository here, and you can see that whole list as you go down. Just scroll down this list, you'll see which ones are using it. Most of the projects just include the source code in the zip download that you get with the project. The downloads page is not usable for VFPX. The downloads isn't really, you'll see a different approach that the VFPX development teams have used. One thing is that Codeplex was the history of VFPX. VFPX was one of the first projects on Codeplex, but the way VFPX uses CodePlex is completely different than all other projects. Usually it's one project per project, where VFPX is an umbrella project that has the 40 or so projects underneath it. And in that case, we're sort of fighting the way CodePlex was designed. So we use it quite differently. Same with documentation. The documentation page wasn't really useful because each of the individual projects documented on their own wiki pages. But a new developer who's created Boxbin to PRG has taken on a new approach for the documentation page in the last couple weeks, and is going to have links on this page to other documentation pages within the wiki. The more useful parts of CodePlex here, discussion page. The discussion page is a threaded discussion. Create a topic, respond to the topic, and so on. This is where people can talk about various VFPX projects, make suggestions, drive communication within the project. And this is a pretty good place for that. Likewise, there's always things where enhancements are made or enhancements are requested and bugs are found. And so the issues tracks bugs and enhancement requests for the project. It's one of those things that allows the project managers to see what's available or what needs to be worked on, as well as possibly delegating in those rare cases where more than one person's working on a project, so that they can delegate enhancements to to other people on their team. The people page is a list of all the organizers, all the coordinators, which are the admins, well as all the different developers are basically project managers within the and the list goes on, which is nice to see people participating. License is the license of which is maintained. We read through it and see that it's only 11 items on it and very simplistic and very friendly to developers. So anyways, that's CodePlex in a nutshell. If you have any questions about it, now would be a good time to do that. I should unmute it.
The conference is now in conversation mode.
All right, were there any questions on CodePlex? All right.
The conference is now in presentation mode.
All right. So what I thought I'd do then with the remaining amount of time that I have is just go through a number of, a handful, I should say, of projects that I found very useful of late and have been implementing in our my development environment as well as our applications. The first one I want to go over is Fox Barcode QR. QR codes are what you see on the screen here in the lower right corner. It's a two-dimensional barcode that can encode a lot of different information. This is not your typical UPC code or typical barcode that you would use in a that you may see used in things like plants and so on. But you're seeing everywhere these days. A lot of companies are using these to assist in marketing. Smartphones these days have QR code readers that you can install on them. And one of my favorite things that I saw a QR code implemented at was in Houston at Johnson Space Center. The Saturn V rocket that's laying on its side inside a building has different stops that you can stop at and read about the stage that's in front of you, the rocket stage that's sitting in front of you and what it's about. But on the 3-foot by 2-foot information sheet that's sitting there, not everything about that module or that stage can actually be described. So they have a QR code that you can take your smartphone, click on or read the QR code, which then takes you to a URL to a website that has even more information about that stage. One of our customers recently implemented a QR code. They rent equipment, and that equipment needs to get back eventually to their office. It's recreational equipment, and so when the person's done with their day on the hill, they want to bring their equipment back to the office where they rented it. And so they use QR codes to embed directions to a website with directions back to their office. And so they printed these out on business cards. They hand the business cards with the equipment that they're handing the folks. And then when they're done for the day, they take a scan of the QR code. It gives them directions using Google Maps, I believe. So those are the kinds of things. We're using them at the Southwest Fox Conference. We're embedding contact information like you see here on the screen. We're embedding that contact information into the QR code. So instead of exchanging business cards, I shouldn't say the old-fashioned way because it's still a great way to exchange information, but instead of having to collect a bunch of business cards, take them back to your office and enter in your contacts that you made at the conference through all the networking opportunities that you had, you can actually just scan the barcode, add that person's contact right to your phone, which I'm sure will sync back to your main repository of contact information. Let's look at that. Bring up. So here we have a small sample program on the screen here where you can actually create the actual barcode or the QR code. The majority of this code up here, creating a cursor and I'm inserting a record, my record for my destination. The majority of the code here is just setup code. Here you can see I create a new object called Fox Barcode QR for the Fox Barcode QR PRG. I have a reference to that object. In this case, I'm just going to do two things. I'm going to create a file name, which is what you're doing with the Fox Barcode QR is you're going to create an image file, PNG, a JPEG type file. So I create the file name, and then here I make a call to a method on in this program itself. This is not anything to do with QR code. I pass an object reference to the Fox barcode with the file name. And the program down here, a lot of this is code. The first big setup code is the text and text to create the format. In this case, I'm creating a V-card format, which is a common contact information format. A lot of other uses here is just embedding a URL into a barcode. And all you would do in that case is just the text for that QR code would be the URL itself. I'm going to create a QR code. I'm also going to create a text file. The text file here was for debugging purposes to make sure that I had the V-card information correct. None of this is required. In fact, there's only really one line of code here. Once you have the content that you want to encode, you make a call to the Fox barcode object, to the QR barcode image method, passing into it the information you want to encode into the barcode, the file name you want to create, and then a couple of parameters to find size and type. That's really it. Create a new object, create your content, call one method, it creates an image file, and that's it. That image file can then be used in things like reports. In this case, I put the name of the file into a cursor, and I can do a report preview on that. You can use it on a form with an image control and so on. Nothing really special. I mean, all it's doing is creating an image, and that image, any way you can do it in Fox, is perfectly acceptable. So let's just run this program so that you can see what it's doing. And this is just, again, a straight VFP report. Nothing fancy. This is not Foxy Preview or XFRX or anything. This is standard VFP9 report preview. And so what we did for Southwest Fox and Southwest X-Base ++ was we printed out all the QR codes, and we took a X-Acto knife and sliced down each page where the person could just choose to pull the sticker off of the label that we generated it on. And then they could see what was embedded into the barcode itself, so that they could make that choice of whether they wanted that on their badge or not. But that's really all there is to it. It's beautiful. The only thing that comes with Fox Barcode QR is this program and a DLL, an open source DLL that's used to help generate the barcode.
The conference is now in conversation mode.
Are there any questions on Fox Barcode QR? All right.
The conference is now in presentation mode.
Okay, by the way, Fox Barcode QR was created by Guillermo and Luis Maria. Both are from South America. Guillermo passed away, boy, I'm losing track of this, I think about a year ago. And but Luis Maria, who was the ambassador to Southwest Fox last year, was nice to meet him in person, is continuing to make enhancements and improvements. Okay, I know you guys have probably seen Thor, but I want to show you a couple things about it. I think I mean, Thor is a very big product, and it's got some new things in it that are maybe new to you. But basically, I'm going to show you how Thor can be used to improve the use of Thor, and how you can actually run some of the different Thor tools quicker and find them easier. One of the things, Jim Nelson, who's the project manager and lead developer on Thor, he was helped by several other people, including Doug Hennig and Tore from Norway, and Matt Slay, of course, is an idea guy for many of the things in Thor. But lots of other developers have contributed to Thor. There's just tons and tons of different tools that you can run within Thor, all contributed by a number of people in the Fox community. One of the things I think is really important, and I'll show you how to get to it in a bit, is Jim Nelson has recently started his what he calls tweets, which is this week's exceptional tools. And Jim is actually going through and detailing how to use various tools within Thor. And even those of us who thought we knew a lot about Thor are finding these little snippets and write-ups to be extremely useful and are very revealing to the details of how to use some of the tools in Thor. All right, so Thor, when you install it, installs a couple of menus. The Thor menu has a launcher on it, which is one of the tools I want to show tonight. And then you have the Thor Tools, which is the repository of various tools that you can run within Thor. And you can see by just me scrolling down through this list, the number, that some of these have submenus, and here we got code listings, and just the list goes on and on and on. And you can extend this yourself. I have created a tool, a menu bar for my VFPX sessions, and some of the things within VFPX, and even some of the tools that I've created for, or I have written and incorporated within Thor. The launcher, I don't know how many people are using the launcher versus the menu, but most people I see using Thor are just jumping on the menu, or have eventually created hotkeys to some of the more recent or more frequently used tools. But one of the things I wanted to show here is if I'm looking for a tool, oops, I got my wrong one here, system list. Let's remove that. Basically, if I look at empty with the filter, it shows just going down the list of all the various tools that are within Thor. But because Thor is potentially overwhelming, and I can tell you that I have not used everything in Thor and don't know everything in Thor. So this is a great way to find stuff. But if I'm looking for something that I created, I always include my company's initials in it. And so I can just type in my company initials, and it brings up a shorter list of the various Thor tools that are incorporated. So the ones that are highlighted in yellow are the ones that I have added myself, not included directly with Thor. For instance, the the column listing utility I created and then handed it over to Jim, and Jim incorporated into Thor. But I also created a link to the white light view editor, as well as a tool that I created to set path to every project path within a project when I open it. And this is something I've used for ages, and I made a hotkey shortcut to it, and it just simplifies things. This is one thing that I use all the time, and it's something that I use to find various tools that I haven't shortcutted otherwise. Move this now. Left is it? Okay. Out down the way. Favorites is when I'm on a tool, I can click favorite, and it'll show up on my favorites list, and that's strictly similar to a favorite for bookmarking, or your favorites for the properties, events and methods on the property sheet, and so on. It's just a shortcut to the things you use most frequently. You can also click on toolbar, and I'm not sure I can get, there we go, I can move that way. This is the Thor toolbar. This is a relatively new feature of Thor, and you can actually have buttons become available for various tools within Thor just by clicking on the toolbar button. When you click the toolbar checkbox on, it will prompt you to see if you want a caption, like you see here with Finder, or if you want an icon, as you see with the Thor guy sitting here. So you have your choice to do that. You can also have tools run at startup. If you have tools that you want that, I don't know, do some cleanup behind the scenes, or arrange your IDE a certain way, or in the case of like IntelliSense X, you want the IntelliSense X components to be runnable anytime you're editing a program or in a method editor or whatever. it allows you to have those tools run and set themselves up individually. Very powerful configuration. So that's the Thor launcher. When you can also run the tools, you can edit the tools, you can remove tools, and so on. I don't necessarily use it all that often to run tools, but I use it to configure the settings a lot and to locate various tools within the repository. The other part of Thor that I wanted to show is check for updates. I happen to think personally this is the #1 reason why you should have Thor available. Years ago, the VFPX developers got together at Southwest Fox and were trying to figure out a way to make it simpler for developers to basically download everything in VFPX and install it all at once. And that was quite simple. Every project manager has their own release schedule. They're going to make their own determination of when it's ready to release. And if someone's in charge of building a giant, massive installer, they could be updating that multiple times a week, because that's how often early on, especially when projects were releasing betas all the time, it was very rapid succession of releases. And in the case of today, things have slowed down a little bit because you have a lot of projects that have matured and have hit a stable release and don't really have a whole lot more to enhance on it. Then, of course, you have things like Thor, which is being released every month, sometimes multiple times a month. And so the challenge was, how do we get it so that you can simply implement a Thor component or tool and be notified that the releases are available and simplify the whole implementation? Well, I think most of us would say that over time, software has come to the point where check for updates and getting installs for any package you pretty much get today is becoming more commonplace, or has been commonplace for quite some time. Jim put in Thor the ability to update various Thor components initially, and then eventually evolve that into every single VFPX project having the ability to install through Thor. So what you basically have here is, if you are familiar with other development platforms like .NET, where NuGet allows you to install things into your projects, or Chocolatey, which is an installer that allows you to install just about anything under the sun. Basically, push a button, it downloads it, and it runs the installer, and it brings it into the environment that you're working with. And that's exactly what Thor Updates do. It comes down, gives you a whole list here. You can see the ones in yellow are ones that I haven't updated, that I have installed already. You have the blue ones here, which is a new feature that Jim's implemented in the last, I don't know, 2-3 months, where it's a new project, new to VFPX. And then you have all the ones here in white that are current, means that I have them installed and I'm running the latest version. And then I have some green ones here that were recently updated that I don't necessarily have installed. I do not use Thor to update every single project. I have every single project downloaded and installed in a way that Thor knows nothing about at this time. So I don't necessarily use this except for key things that are always changing, like IntelliSense X, the Thor core code, Thor beta, and you can see the PEM editor, GoFish, Foxunit. These are things that I'm using well, very regular, I should say every day, but very regularly when I'm doing development. So anyways, it's useful. Click the ones you want, click install updates, which I won't do in the middle of a presentation. But you can see if you go down the list here. Oops. I don't know what I just did, but it's going out. It brings up the web page for Thor. You do and if you go down the list, what I was trying to do is show you that there's a description down here of the details about each of the releases. All right.
The conference is now in conversation mode.
Are there any questions about Thor, Thor repository, or things that I showed you about Thor?
Were you going to talk about PEM editor?
I was not going to cover the PEM editor, but I can talk about it if you like.
I've got an adjacent question maybe. I keep trying to use it, and my big complaint is that if you've got the debug window on, it's really slow. Is it just me, or?
No, the reason is quite simple. The PEM editor has a lot of timer-based events, and because it's constantly trying to figure out what you're doing within the IDE, and because of that, just a lot of timers firing off and a lot of code that's running. And so if you have the debugger up, which is the only way I know other than to write code like suspend, it's the only way I know how to slow Foxpro down intentionally.
Yeah.
So that's exactly what's happening in that case.
So does that keep you from using it, or do you close the debugger window?
I close the debugger window. I mean, for me, it's a strict line of when I'm running code to figure it out, I'm not going to be using the PEM editor. If I'm in development and I'm making changes through a class library, through the form designer, the class designer, I'm not necessarily in debug mode.
Yeah.
So I jump in and out of debug mode separate from what I do in development.
And that's what I've done. I've got PEM where I turn it on and off all the time, but since I haven't gotten in the good habit of using it, I turn it off and forget about it.
Yep.
And then,
well, the nice thing about the PEM editor is it's only needed under certain circumstances. Now, Jim and I have had this debate many times. Jim always claims that I'm slow to adopt. I say that I'm stuck in my ways. I've been using Visual Foxpro since, 1995? And I know how I like to do things. And so once I see how to do it better, I slowly adopt. And I use the PEM editor for specific things when I'm doing development, adding a number of methods, adding a number of properties, changing descriptions of the properties, events, and methods, and so on. But I still use it, I should say, I still use the property sheet where I know some developers have given up on the property sheet and jumped strictly into the PEM editor. And so to me, it's a different commitment level when you go that far in. I still like the property sheet as I've always used it. But some people have said, no, the PEM editor is a complete replacement for the property sheet. And I totally get that. I just haven't got out of my stuck ways of doing it.
okay, thanks.
Welcome. Those are my favorite parts of the session is when you guys jump in and ask questions. So feel free to do more.
The conference is now in presentation mode.
Okay, I'm not going to show the SQL Server Upsizing Wizard, but I want to talk about it because it's one of those things that as I talk with developers, I I shouldn't say a lot, a number of people have asked me over the years, what is your approach to migrating Foxpro DBF-based data into SQL Server in the case where you have a project that is migrating the backend to a backend data store in SQL Server? And for a number of years, for a very long time, I should say, is I have my own conversion utilities, which I still rely on for certain projects. But the reason we had to is because the SQL Server upsizing wizard that was released with Visual Foxpro all the way through and up to the Sedna release, if you tried it, you probably came to the same conclusion that most people I know who have done that have said, is the SQL Server upsizing wizard is broken. It's broken beyond usability, and in every sense of the term, they were 100% correct. Microsoft recognized that and also knew that with the advent of new versions of SQL Server being 2005, 2008, now 2012, and 2014 just around the corner, the SQL Server upsizing wizard that came with Visual Foxpro was completely inadequate. And so the question was, were they going to do anything about it? And with the Sedna release, Microsoft Microsoft was smart enough, they went out and hired Doug Hennig to pretty much break it apart and put it back together in a better way. What Doug did with the SQL Server upsizing wizard is he broke it up between the UI and the engine before it was all together. And by doing this, there's two things that, well, he not only broke it apart with the UI and the engine, but he also fixed all the bugs, improved performance, and enhanced it so it was extensible for the newer versions of SQL Server that weren't previously considered. And by doing that, by splitting it apart, the UI to the engine, the SQL Server upsizing wizard is no longer just an upsizing wizard that you can step through and do a conversion. You can actually use a program to control the engine itself, instantiate the engine, set some properties, call some methods, and programmatically make a reproducible or a rerunnable conversion within the engine portion. And the engine portion is also extendable, and all that was detailed in the Sedna book that's also available from the German Foxpro user group, Reinhard Becker and team. Anyways, in the last year, Mike Potcher, who's a friend of mine here in the Michigan area over on the west side of the state, Mike was going through a project where he had to migrate data, ran into a number of issues with more current versions of SQL Server, as well as issues that he ran into that no one previously reported with the upsizing wizard. Along with the reports of the bugs, also provided a number of code fixes to Doug, who has been kind enough to incorporate those in the current version that is now hosted under VFPX. So if you have any SQL Server upsizing needs, certainly give this a try. During the testing of the Sedna product, I tested the upsizing wizard on a number of personal projects as well as customer-based projects, and had every single one of them just nearly seamlessly update into SQL Server. So I had a project where a customer came to me. It's just to show that there are issues. There's one particular issue that I've been burned on that I'll give you a heads up on in case you run into it. And that was the first customer came to me and said, "Hey, Rick, I'd like you to upsize our system data into SQL Server. How much time do you think it'll take? How much do you think it'll cost?" And I said, well, if I can use some tools, it should take very little time. If not, if it doesn't work, then we have to go the standard route. And I went to convert it, and it blew up. And it turns out, the first time I go to use it in a production job, it wouldn't work for me. And the reason for that was simply numeric overflow conditions within the DBFs themselves. And I couldn't get the customer to fix them. And because we were going to be converting database after database, we couldn't rely on that. And I couldn't figure out in time how to fix it within the SQL Server upsizing wizard itself. So we ended up having to go the route. But what it was is one of those cases where they try to stick a number like 10,000 into a numeric field that was only set up for 9,999.99. And Foxpro will actually stick that number of 10,000 into it. It'll just overflow into the decimal part, and the wizard just chokes on that, as does Visual Foxpro in general. So just a little thing to warn you about, but in general, very solid upsizing wizard that we have here.
The conference is now in conversation mode.
Are there any questions about the SQL Server upsizing wizard? Is anybody using the SQL Server upsizing wizard? Okay.
The conference is now in presentation mode.
Xsource we talked a little bit about during the list of projects that are in VFPX. One thing I want to bring up, it's the Xsource project has in it like Class Browser and Object Browser and Task Pane Manager and any of the X-based tools that Microsoft shipped with the product Data Explorer and so on. All those are in the Xsource and available for you to make changes to it. And very few people are making changes to it. Myself with the Data Explorer, Jim Nelson for a while was modifying code references before Matt Slade created GoFish. So those two projects were spin-offs on their own. The Data Explorer is something I happen to enjoy working with and have made some modifications to it. But if you don't know, there's also some enhancements that have been made to the reporting apps that you use within the IDE and possibly may ship out with your applications. In particular, there's a couple of bugs that have been fixed within the report builder, which is the report builders used within the IDE as you're modifying reports and doing things like, text box properties and so on. There's a couple of bugs where, well, one bug in particular is when the printer driver information is stored in the FRX, even though you initially said do not store the report environment in the FRX, which leads to all kinds of production support problems when your customers go to print a report to a specific printer on their environment, but you have hard-coded a different printer within the FRX. So there's a bug that was fixed for that. Under certain circumstances, without your knowledge, the FRX would get polluted with your printer information. And then there's a UI change that I have on the screen here. If you look very closely, the CR, if positive, is off by 1 pixel right there for numeric formats. And Doug moved that over in the production one. And also the set date forma actually now reads set date format in the fix. Not necessarily a big UI bug, but irritated Doug enough where he fixed it, especially for his Stonefield query product.
The conference is now in conversation mode.
Any questions about Xsource?
The conference is now in presentation mode.
Box charts has been around a long time. It's gone back many, many years with VFPX. By the way, VFPX it's coming up on its 7th year already, which is one of those things where I'm like, where does the time flown? But Fox charts was one of the projects that's been around almost near the very beginning. I'm not going to really show Fox charts per se. I want to show a tool that Jim Nelson's created that not many people in my discussions even know exists. And so I want to show the visual chart designer. Okay, Fox charts has in it or included with it a pretty darn nice help file, which you know, I've said very few projects have documentation incorporated in it. Fox charts is definitely one of those projects that has a pretty good set of documentation already included with it. Here's an example of Fox charts code. I'm just going to execute some code here. And here's an example of Fox charts. For those who don't know, Fox charts is a control that you can drop on a form that allows you with some property settings to and the core use of GDI plus X, which is another VFPX project. GDI plus X is one of the original projects in VFPX. And is also known as a foundation class because a lot of our foundation project, because it's used by things like the theme controls, box charts, and so on. A number of projects are now using GDI plus X incorporated within their projects as a key component of their projects. Box charts just being one. So anyways, that's what this is a Fox chart graph right here. If we click on this button, it says chart options, it brings up the visual chart designer. And the visual chart designer, from what I understand, was originally created so that developers could come in here and say, well, instead of the multiple bars, I'm going to bring a horizontal bar. And I'm going to shadow on that. You can see the shadows on the various bars. And make it a cylinder instead of a square. And I'm going to do a vertical legend. I come here and I can change the fonts of the legends and so on. I can change different shapes. I can come in and do backgrounds and margins, scale. I can make all these changes to the dozens and dozens and dozens of properties that are associated with any one chart. And at the very end, I can actually see the code that I would need to put in my program to create this Fox chart. And that by itself goes, okay, well, this is cool. I can save to clipboard, go in my program, paste it in, and now I have all the properties that are associated with that Fox chart. Or I can come in here and say, what are just the non-default properties, or what are the properties that I changed? And this simplifies your coding and makes it really easy for you as a developer to learn box charts without having to dig through all that documentation and figure out everything that you need to know about box charts to incorporate it within your applications. Now, my thought was, well, if it's good enough for developers, wouldn't it be good enough for our end users or our customers? And the reality is yes. So now you can not only programmatically control box charts from within your applications, but now you can give your customers a very easy to use interface to modify a Fox chart to their, to the wildest dreams, however they want it to be. Of course, they're not going to know what to do with this last properties page. So in your production code, you may want to just remove this or hide it somehow. But the rest of this you may want to spruce up the UI, maybe not. Maybe it's just the way you want it to be in your application, or maybe you want to simplify just specific controls that you want to give them for the chart itself. Anyways, this is the visual chart designer is not something I've talked to a lot of people and said, hey, do you know anything about this, and have them respond to, oh yeah, I use it all the time. I think this is one of the hidden gems within VFPX, especially if you're using box charts. So I just wanted to give you guys an opportunity to bring that to your attention.
The conference is now in conversation mode.
Any questions on the visual chart designer for Fox charts?
The Fox charts can be incorporated into reports, right? Because they just make images files.
Correct. It can be included in reports on your screen, as you can see in a form. Your choice, yes, absolutely. Any other questions?
The conference is now in presentation mode.
Code Analyst, there's a couple more I want to show you. Code Analyst is a refactoring tool. It roots out bad smells in your code. If you're familiar with refactoring, it's the ability to take existing working code and modify it so that it works better, or it applies best practices, or whatever is important within your organization. In the last year, Andrew's made a number of bug fixes, and I just want to give you a quick, not a full overview of it, but just show you a couple of things as far as the types of bad smells that you can get rooted out of your code and revealed in your code. All right. Basically, when you run Code Analyst, you can run it on a PRG, or you can run it on a whole project if you have a project that you want to analyze. I try not to do that right off the bat. I like to just pick something short and then analyze bigger scopes within a project itself. Because what you want to do is first pick the rules that you want to apply. If there's too many comments, I'm not sure too many of us would feel that you can have too many comments in your code, but the reality is you probably can. How you determine too many comments is up to you, but this code here will analyze any method within the scope of the analysis and determine that a certain percentage of lines in the method or procedure are comments, and will just basically give you a warning saying that you have too many comments. But some things here, like return within a with end with construct. Back at the 2006 Great Lakes Conference, Doug Hennig, in an offhanded remark, mentioned that a return statement within a with end with construct is one of the known gotchas for C5 errors. And a lot of us were like shaking our heads like, holy cow, how do you go through your code to find all the with end withs and determine if you have return statements in it? Because what happened was the C5 error would happen after it executed more code after the return statement was executed. It wouldn't bomb out or C5 error on the actual return statement. This is a perfect way to run on all your code a quick analysis to see if you have any returns within the with end with statement, and possibly remove C5 errors from your applications. Too many lines. There's rules, best practices that would say that 2 pages of code in any one method is, anything over 2 pages of code is too many lines. Well, you know, if you use a small enough font, you can get a lot of code in 2 pages. But all kidding aside, you determine, you know, how many lines is, like in this case, it's 150 lines in the actual script. All the scripts here are visual code, no scripting language or anything like that. Some people would say every method should have a return. A return line and a value returned from it, whether it's true, false, or a numeric or character or whatever. So you can add a code check to see if you have a return value returned. So you should have only one return statement, and if you have more than one, it should flag it. You know, these are all rules that you can turn on and off your choice. You can also add and create your own rules. For instance, one of the rules I created, if it's in the list here, well, it doesn't really matter, is I want to know if there are suspend statements remaining in my code. And because suspend is a feature not available, error 1001 whenever it hits it. And the thing that I'm probably going to do most often when I put a suspend in my code is forget to take it or comment it out before I make a release to production. And so having that available to me is not necessarily a bad smell, but a bad practice, and sometimes a stupid practice in the case of leaving it suspended. So there's all kinds of rules you can write. You can create your own. You can export them. You can share them with other developers and so on. It's something that when I show this, I get a lot of feedback on, because a lot of developers don't realize that there's a tool out here that helps you find bad code within your applications. Even if you don't write bad code yourself, which I'm sure everyone who's attending tonight or watching this later isn't going to write bad code, but if you ever inherit an application from another developer who has written bad code, this is a great way to help you analyze that application as you're coming up to speed or deciding if you're going to take over that project for a potential customer.
The conference is now in conversation mode.
Any questions on the code analyst? Okay.
The conference is now in presentation mode.
Okay, so the next, and I think the last one I want to show tonight, it is getting kind of late for those of us on the East Coast and those in the East, period, on the east side of the planet, is Finder. And I know that Jim has actually shown this, so I'm not going to go in depth on Finder itself tonight, but there's a couple of things that Jim has added recently based on some discussions I've had with him. In general, Finder helps you search for files within a project or classes within a project. Classes can be VCX based or PRG based. Treats them identical. It is not like GoFish or code reference. It doesn't find text within source code. It finds text within file names or class names. It's a distinction. When I first was looking at this, I'm like, why are we creating another search engine when I know that Jim happens to be a huge fan of GoFish? In fact, he was the one who kept pushing me to use GoFish when it was first released. So why was it created? Well, it's not. It's completely different. It's looking for files, file names, and class names. One difference with Finder over every other project practically in VFPX is most projects in VFPX is download a file, unzip the contents to a folder of your choice, and then run the app or include the source in your project for components. Finder can only be installed through Thor. So if you're not using Thor, this might be a good reason to use Thor. It has not only a dependency for the install, but also for components within Thor are leveraged by Finder itself. What I want to show, though, is something that I sort of was falling into a little bit. I have here a project that was opened that I was searching on. This is the source code for HackCX, which is a tool that we sell. And basically, I was looking at the source, and when I'm looking for something, I may just type in, you know, file name search, and you can see I got file names. Over here on the side, I have a list of the different types of files that you would see. And what I was seeing here is something that sort of gave me a feeling that, well, why, I don't need this just as a finder. If I don't look for anything, it gives me all the all the files within the project. And over here, all the types. There's the graphics. I can see the class libraries. I can look at PRGs. And what was coming to me is this is almost becoming like a project manager or project manager replacement. Pardon me. Over the last, I don't know, it's got to go back almost 10 years now, there's been a number of Foxpro developers who have tried to create project manager replacements, and they get so far and then they give up. There's always something where about that last 20% of replacing a project manager that trips people up. And Microsoft tried to make it easier with project hooks and the project object to give us programmatic access to the project manager and the events within the project manager that fire off. But the reality is there's something that's always either they've lost initiative or lost desire to do it, but they couldn't complete the project manager. So I went to Jim and I said, Jim, look, we got basically here along the side here, we have the tabs, and this has got very few files in it. But if you're using a big project, you'd have all the different file types, which are the tabs that you see across the top of the project manager. By right-clicking, you can open it, or double-clicking on a project, you can, or on a file, you can open it in the editor that you would see it open just as if you did the project manager. But you have also all these other features that Jim's incorporated that are not in the project manager. And one of the things that I've always wanted in a project manager is the ability to go through and filter the list so that I don't see the 1,000 bitmap files that are in my project. I want to see the other files that are in the project manager. Or if I want to look up a file in the project manager, the only way for me to do that is to start searching or hack the PJX file to do lookups and queries, which I have built tools to do. The only thing that Jim was missing here, I mean, it's not 100% here, but it's very, very close. He was missing a build button so that you could build the project. Now, I don't necessarily use Jim's build button because I have a project hook that has my own project builder, but if anything is missing from a standard project manager is the build button. Jim now added the build button, and it's got everything on it but the version information, which, okay, that could be added at some point, but this has got all the ability to recompile everything and display, and he's just hooking into the build command behind the scenes to do that. The other thing is the original Finder only had a single instance, and that meant that if you had multiple projects open, which is not very common for a lot of developers, but is very common for me. I often have 2 or 3 projects open. But I could have worked around that because I could just open multiple instances of VFP, and that's probably a better way to do it anyways. But Jim's actually made this so that you can open multiple Finder windows now, one for each project that you have open. And you can see here, there is no project manager behind the scenes. This is, it's open behind, but there's no instance of the actual project manager window. So anyways, this is, to me, this is the best part about Finder, is it's actually becoming a project manager replacement tool for me. And I think that if there's shortcomings you see in the project manager that you think would be really cool if we could have that, this is a place now that we can do that. All right, so that's what I wanted to show on Finder.
The conference is now in conversation mode.
Are there any questions on Finder and some of the ideas that I have with Finder?
Is there any way to get Finder outside of the VFP window?
Yes. All you have to do is right-click, make it dockable, and it will go outside of the main frame, the main VFP frame.
Is that true for other tools? PEM editor or?
It is true. Anything that can be made dockable can be pulled outside the frame.
Cool.
Yep. Okay. Any other questions?
The conference is now in presentation mode.
I take it you had no forms in that sample project you were showing?
That is correct. There was only forms. They were only class-based forms.
Otherwise, we'd have forms on that left side.
Oh yeah, you can see all the different file types that you would normally see in a project are incorporated in that list.
Cool.
All right, so to sort of beat the drum here for VFPX, because that's what I like to do. Everything you saw tonight was 100% money free. You know, not a single dollar, not a single euro, not a single rupee, not a single anything. No currency has to be exchanged for everything in not only what you saw tonight, but everything that's incorporated in VFPX. No developers that I know of are being paid specifically to do VFPX development. There are people I've seen where they have donations on their websites and so on, but you are not obligated in any way, shape, or form to pay anyone money. If you want, you can, but no one asks it. What I ask at every session I do on VFPX is that you try the stuff in VFPX, because once you try something, you're probably going to find something that's useful and something that's going to make your life as a developer better. Okay, there's things that will improve your productivity. There's things that will make things easier. There's components that will make your applications more modern, and so on. A lot of people have said, you know, Rick, I looked at VFPX and I can't write code to the level of Jim Nelson or Craig Boyd or Microsoft or anyone else who's written code and committed code into VFPX. Well, I think that that's baloney. I think that really, honestly, anyone can contribute. But let's just say you don't feel comfortable in writing code and contributing code. There are other ways that you can get involved. One is to use the products, make contributions to the developers by telling them what you like. Tell the developers that you're using it. One of the things that we have seen happen is that, and I can personally speak to this, is that out of all the articles I've ever written, I get very few people giving me feedback, whether they thought it was good, whether they thought it was bad, whatever. And when you don't get any feedback, it's like talking into a camera. You don't see the audience behind the camera. And the audience is what gives you reassurance of what you're doing is good. So my suggestion is that if you can provide even just a, hey, so-and-so, I was using VFPX, whatever, and boy, has it made my life better. Boy, are my customers excited by our new UI or whatever it is, just to give them the positive reinforcement that the hours and hours, I mean, we're talking thousands of man hours by a number of the developers who've contributed to VFPX. All that time you spent is making a difference in the things that other Foxpro developers are doing. That would be, if just one thing you can do is provide some feedback to the people working on VFPX, that would go a a really long way in making them excited about doing more and contributing. You can test. You can develop new ideas and contribute those. You can try things that you may not be doing in your job. One person was telling me, hey, my job's going away. I have no other skills other than being a developer, and this is a really bad situation for me. Well, I could tell you for sure that nobody has been fired from VFPX. So if you are unskilled as a project manager or you've never written documentation, you can actually learn on the job, and no one's going to fire you. If you do this at work, your boss may get irritated that you're wasting time or maybe not doing a good enough job that they're paying you to do, and they may not like that. But with VFPX, you can get skills that you may not have by learning on the job and doing things like documentation and marketing and being a tester and being a project leader. And there's a whole bunch of things in your career that you may not have tried that you could do on VFPX. So here's a chance for one. Let's see if we can get this. Or maybe I was unmuted. Okay. I'll give you one last chance to ask some questions. All right. Well, then I think we'll just...
The conference is now in conversation mode.
That opened the mic there, I think, but
Okay.
I don't think we have any questions. I'm not seeing anything in chat.
Oh, okay. So yeah, someone's using the VFP to C32 Windows API library and loves it. That's great. So anyways, in summary, let's just wrap it up here. The VFPX project is giving you lots of opportunities to improve your IDE and the development experience that you have within the IDE. It has the ability to improve your customers' end applications, make them more modern in many ways. Anything that's in beta all the way up through production status is ready in most cases. My thing that allows you to get comfortable with that. But you can also read about it in the VFPX book as well. There's a lot of good information about real-world experience from the writers of the book. I guess you should by now know that VFPX is a significant part of the future of Visual Foxpro. Microsoft's certainly not doing anything, so the developers in our community have to step up and really seriously take VFP where it needs to go for those of us who are going to be writing Visual Foxpro applications into the next decade. Get involved, go download the tools. I'll promote the book one more time. Go ahead and buy it. Thank you very much for listening in. We don't have any evaluations, but you can always send me your comments to my email address, which is on the screen there, and you can follow me on Twitter if you like. Although I haven't been as active as I'd like to be on Twitter because of, well, I got to make a living at this point, and we got a lot of work that we're working on. So I apologize for not participating too much. But thanks for listening, and look forward to seeing you guys online as well as at the different conferences and so on.
Thanks a lot, Rick.
You're very welcome.